So the next introduction, I think he needs no introduction, is, yes, is Dr. Frank. He has been with us for the last 24 hours. We've had several meetings. He is a wealth of knowledge. He just doesn't stop pouring out the knowledge about not only the elections here, but the elections across the United States. He's met with legislators and grassroots and in practically every state, and 43 states, and he lights wildfires. And my husband and I and somebody else and a few other people in this room had heard him in Mabel, Minnesota. And he said, I come in and I'll come into your state if you want me there. And we got together with Iowa Canvassing, got our voter rolls for the state. We purchased them, we sent them, he did some analysis, and he agreed to come. He's been gracious and just a wealth of knowledge. You're gonna learn a lot from him. And the most important thing that I heard from him is he said, there is no they, it's we. It's all about we. We have to learn from him. We have to listen, ask questions, and take it into our own hands. And he will be there to support us all along the way. But it is our job, and he is going to teach us how to do that.
Testing, 1, 2. Thank you. I'm working. I got a lavalier. You can all hear me? So I always tell people that I work all day and I play at night. And this is playtime for me, so let's have fun together. And if you have questions, jump right in and talk to me. We worked hard this afternoon with about 20 people, and kind of going over strategy. I'm going to go over strategy with you too, but tonight I'll be a little more formal. I'll show you some stuff, but we can get into the weeds as deep as you want. And the way I like to put it is I am the last one to leave, so I'll answer every question if I can. I have been in 43 states, and I've learned what works and what doesn't work. And the thing I just coming into Iowa, I just got to tell you, you guys are pretty asleep here. You need to wake up. And I think you're not alone. It seems like I've been, in the early days, all the states that you can imagine that were where all the noise was. I was there first, of course, but. Now the states that have been kind of asleep are like, well, wait a minute, it happened here too, and we didn't know. And that's kind of the mode we're in now, and you need to fix it. So hopefully I'm going to equip you. By the time you leave, if you can't explain it to your friends, I didn't do my job. You need to be able to explain it to your friends. That's the first thing. The next thing is, then you need to know what you need to do. And hopefully that'll happen. So I'm not just here to just talk at you. I'm here to help you. I like the way Laura put it. I really work with the grassroots teams all over the country, and we're winning. And I need you to understand that, and I need you to see why and how, and then you'll be part of it. All right. So I got the rolls. I only got the rolls from her last night. So, but I had done a ton of work before that as well, and I'll show you some of that work. But I was able to get at least my first pass done on all your counties, and I'll show you some of that work. And I think you're going to like it. All right. So here's kind of my opening quote. When the righteous thrive, the people rejoice. When the wicked rule, the people groan. I'm hearing a lot of groaning. And it's because the wicked are ruling. And we have to fix that, okay? And I have a strategy to help you fix that in your own state. I've been doing this long enough, I've learned a few things. It doesn't take a lot. In Nebraska, 2 ladies and a priest changed that state, okay? In Pennsylvania, 3 moms changed that state. It doesn't take much. A small group, you can change your whole state. And I'm going to equip you for that. But one of them, Tony Shute in Pennsylvania, she says, education is key, but the fix is local. And that is exactly right. And you don't have to solve your state's problems. You have to solve your county's problems. You have to solve your city's problems. And when you do that, it percolates up to the legislature. And I'm going to explain that to you guys. All right, so I'm going to give you a little news update because if most people don't know what's happening around the country because they're not listening to the right news. So I'm going to tell you a few news things that are happening. And I'm going to teach you how they're stealing our elections in a nutshell so you'll understand it and you'll be able to explain it to your friends. And a little bit about me, not much, a little bit about me. Basically, I'm a leaf on the river. And this is the way I describe my life. I wake up every morning, including this morning. I look at the ceiling and I wonder, where am I? This year, I just finished 2 weeks at home, so it's the longest I've been home in almost a year and a half. But the first 6 months of the year, this year, I was only home 7 days. So it tells you, so I'm lost. I wake up in the morning and I'm like, where's the bathroom? But I use that, like that moment of confusion, when you wake up, where am I, that moment of confusion to remind me to pray. And every day I pray, okay, Lord, what have you got in store for me today? And I'm just a leaf on a river. Wherever it's going, whatever eddies we're going to explore, great. And the reason why I like this so much is because I always seem to be in the right place. It's amazing. I could tell you so many stories. I'll tell you a couple tonight of how I'm just in the right place at just the right time, and I had nothing to do with planning that. So I kind of like, I'm a scientist, I'm a physicist, and I'm business owner. I'm used to organizing, planning, working hard, delivering, It's kind of strange for me to just throw myself up into the wind and let God take me wherever we're going. But it's amazing how well it's working. So God's my planner. So I'm sticking with that. So I'm a leaf on a river. That's basically the best way to understand me. I'm going to show you some simple math, because if you understand this simple math, you'll be able to explain it to your friends. I could show you fancy math, but if I do, you'll all go, ooh, but then you can't explain it to your friends. So I need to give you some simple math, okay? I'm going to show you some simple math. And then, oh my goodness, this is a mistake. I forgot to change that. That's supposed to say Iowa. I'm going to show you data for your own state. So I'm going to start big and zoom in. I hope I started the right PowerPoint. I must have, because it had Iowa at the beginning. So that's the problem with cut and paste, right? Okay, so just ignore the California, replace that with Iowa. All right, very good. Okay, some of the breaking news. Louisiana. I just came from Louisiana. The Kyle Ardoin, the Secretary of State there. Thank you for moving that. He's the Secretary of State there. And the reason he's important is because they just had their GOP convention there. And they made their GOP convention about election integrity. By far, like a factor of 5, it's the best attended convention they've ever had in Louisiana. The grassroots knows this. You know that this is a huge issue to you, but the GOP doesn't like it. But they tipped and they did it in Louisiana, and it was a massive turnout. I was one of the keynote speakers. It was very important. I got to do that not because I'm smarty pants, but because the people were demanding it, okay? I get to come and do that. Then for the whole next day, I get to meet with just me and Kyle across the table. And I red-pilled him. And in other words, he now believes that his elections were fraudulent. I think the key moment for him was when he said, oh, Dr. Frank, he says, I understand what you're saying. He says, but our election systems are secure. We have the latest electronic security systems. We work with the federal government. All of our stuff is secure. And I said, okay, let me just check. And so I took my phone out and I set it in the middle of our table, just me and him. And I called my friend. And I said, so, put it on speaker. I said, so tell me, what do you think about Louisiana? Within a minute, he had told Kyle his username and password for his state systems. And we were navigating through all of his state election systems within minutes. Okay? Our secretaries of states are clueless or they're complicit. Okay? I was just reading these comments from your Secretary of State. What a doofus. Okay. Let me just be on record. This guy is a doofus. Okay? Here we go. Iowa's vote tabulators are air-gapped. Like my phone. My phone is air-gapped, right? It's not connected with a wire to the internet. Can I get on the internet from here? I actually had a Secretary of State one time say to me, oh no, Dr. Frank, our elections are secure. I know, I monitor them all day on my phone. These people, they don't have a clue what they're up against. Yeah, I'll tell you one story I didn't tell earlier. So I travel sometimes with a guy named Sean Smith, Colonel Sean Smith. He's retired from the Air Force. He's head of Cause of America. Great guy, a great patriot. For 25 years, he worked in the Air Force on cybersecurity for the Air Force. His job was to examine all the electronics and software they use in all of our military systems and find the flaws. And the way he describes it, he says he has this team of autists These are people with autism. They're brilliant at hacking. They're brilliant at cybersecurity. They spend all their time. He says the problem, and when he retired, he was head of that whole division in the Air Force. He said his problem is, he says, is for every one of those brilliant people I have on my team, China has 10. And all they do all day long is hack into my equipment, hack into my electronics, hack into my software. He says, and we discover all the time we've been hacked in our military systems. He says, when we find a hack, we've typically been hacked for 6 months to a year before we discover it. He says, we are hacked so constantly that we know about it, that we just assume in all our military scenarios we are hacked. We just assume it. He says that doesn't mean we're not fighting it. So he and I were testifying to the Secretary of State, actually in this case was the Deputy Secretary of State of Nebraska, with a bunch of senators in a private meeting. And we were testifying to him and describing this. And he was like, oh no, we have all this security stuff. And so Sean just looks at him, he says, how many autists do you have on your staff? And then he showed him 70 ways he could hack into their state election systems. 70, okay? It's your secretaries of states, if they tell you that your systems are secure, they're wrong. If they believe it, they're dumb. Or maybe they're lying to you, okay? But your systems are not secure. I'm telling you that, I just can tell you that right off the bat. The next thing I can tell you is that we have recordings of your elections being hacked in every one of your counties in Iowa from November 2nd to November 6th, 2020. Every single one of your counties. You know what? That's how we know the username and password for every one of your election directors in your state. Because during that hack, the username and password is used to get in. So we know. Okay? So your systems are not secure. So when your Secretary of State says to you, oh yes, our systems are air-gapped, he's either clueless or he's lying to you, okay? He doesn't get it, right? All right, so there's more I can talk about, but this handout that's supposed to make you feel secure ought to make you feel scared, okay? Your systems are not secure, okay? I'm just gonna tell you that. All right, but anyway, he's the head of the Secretary of State Association for the whole country. So for me to red pill him is big because he's influential around the country. He meets with the secretaries of states. He's one of the first, he is the first and only state so far to rescind from ERIC, to pull out of the ERIC system. The ERIC system, you pay an organization to monitor your rolls and compare them to the rolls in all the other states. And the purpose is supposedly to tell you who you should be removing from your rolls. It's supposed to, yeah.
Sorry. How does the president of the National Security Secretaries of State Association compare to Jenna Griswold's role? She's in charge of something about Secretary of State.
Don't know. Griswold's in charge of Colorado. She's also a crook. So what I've learned, I've met a lot of senior officials. I've met with about half of our secretaries of states and maybe a third of our attorneys generals, is some of them are just stupid. And some of them are evil. And, you know, that's just what and then there's everything in between. Griswold is evil.
Yes, she is.
Okay. And she's not alone. There's several others. But anyway, he's important because he's influential. And for him to now be red-pilled is good because he's now talking to the other secretaries of states. Now we're up against something. If you remember, Soros in a public interview in 2002 announced he was going to own every secretary of state in the United States by 2020. And he's just about succeeded. Okay, so that's where we are. So even though we've got this going, it's a war. It's a good and evil war, right? And every little bit matters, and we're just trying to get the public aware. All right, he's been demanding access to the Haldeman report. In 2016, Hillary lost, and she was not happy, and she was running around telling everybody the Russians hacked our elections, remember? And she's right that our elections were hacked, but it wasn't the Russians. I know who it was, okay? And they were defending our elections, not hacking our elections. And so the Haldeman report was commissioned by the Hillary Clinton campaign. He's Professor Haldeman. He and his graduate students studied all the election systems in the country to find out how they're vulnerable. And he testified in Georgia last year and to show all the ways that our systems were vulnerable, and the judge sealed the report because he doesn't want all the honest people to know how to hack our elections. the bad guys already know how to hack our elections. So he sealed the report, right? Well, he wants it. He wants the report because he wants to try to secure his elections. And he's trying to get copies of the reports for all the other secretaries of states. But the judge in Georgia won't give it to him. But after my meeting with him, maybe he realizes it's moot anyway because they're all hacked. How many autists does he have? So stay tuned. There's other stuff happening in that state I'm not allowed to talk about. The Haldeman report, basically, I already described. All right, good. Other news, all around the country, GOPs are following suit with Texas. They're voting on resolutions saying that the election in 2020 was illegitimate. By the way, 60% of the public already believes 2020 was fraudulent. So we're winning the public opinion. That doesn't mean 60% of the people are willing to do something about it. But at least we know we got the majority of people in America now are already know it's fraudulent. So we're winning that war. But this is going on everywhere. Just Thursday, I think a county in Florida also passed a resolution. So that's happening all around the country. All you need is one person to stand up, and once they do, everybody starts copying. It's great. Remember, I told you I'm always in the right place at the right time? So I was in Oregon in May. This is so awesome. I'm always in the right place at the right time. So a local citizen goes to the clerk and says, I'd like to have a copy of the rolls because I want to do some canvassing. And the clerk said, no. So the citizen went to the judge and said, a judge who ordered that clerk to release it because legally the citizens are entitled to the rolls. So, but the situation is like this. These systems are complicated. Most of our clerks around the country, you'll call them auditors in your state. So forgive me if I keep going back and forth. It's confusing. Every state's got a different name. Most of the clerks don't know how to run their own systems. So the judge ordered her to give the citizen the rolls. Well, she gave him a CD. It turns out that the CD she gave him didn't just have the rolls on it. It also has the SQL database, also has all the computer logs, also has the ballot images, a whole bunch of other stuff on the CD, okay, because she didn't know what she was doing. Okay. When the Secretary of State of Oregon found out, she completely panicked, and she had her AG file a temporary restraining order on that citizen so that the citizen couldn't share any of that information in the public. Here's what it says in the temporary restraining order. Quote, even when systems are not directly connected to networks, they are vulnerable to attack through physical or wireless access. If the court enters a judgment requiring the release of the clear ballot database, that judgment would compromise the security of the election systems used in 15 Oregon counties. In other words, the AG of the state is admitting that the machines are hackable wirelessly. Yes? I'm an expert witness in this case. I just happened to be there. I got to meet with the attorney, and we got to plan the whole strategy. I'm always in the right place at the right time. I also got to be in the Matt DePerno case, Antrim, Michigan. A lot of my evidence is in that case. Speaking of being in the right place at the right time. Tina Peters from Colorado, I'm the one that red-pilled her. And the moment of truth for her, I was telling you I red-pilled Arduino. The moment of truth for her, I'll just kind of jump ahead. I'm having fun now. Forgive me, I'm having fun. I was explaining to her, showing her all the data and all the statistics from her county, and she was like, yeah, okay, yeah. But I think finally the thing I said, okay, well, here are 2,000 people who voted in your county who are dead. She says, oh no, Dr. Frank, that can't happen. Well, why is that, Tina? Well, because we have signature verification on all of our ballots. And I said, well, those dead people, they have really good longhand, because they all got voted. And she's like, well, no. She says, let me call in my expert. So she brought in her expert for her county, Mesa County, for her signature verification. And so I had to listen to the Dog and Pony Show. You know how it goes. I've met with so many, probably 200 clerks around the country. I always have to listen to this, how secure their elections are. And I have to kind of just patiently let them slog through it, even though I know it's not true. They think it's true. So about 5 or maybe 6 minutes into her discussion, she says, we know that our people get tired. Our signature verifying people get tired. We train them extensively. We train twice as many as we think we need because we know they fatigue and we have to swap them out, but they do signature verification. She says, in fact, we stay on top of it the whole time. We monitor it all day long. If anyone starts rejecting too many signatures, we immediately replace them. That is a direct quote. At that moment, I looked over at Tina. Tina looked at me. Her mouth kind of fell open a little bit. She sent the lady out of the room. And she said, okay, so we got some fraud in our election. Now what do we do next? What do we do next? And I said, okay, here, I said, now this was in April of 2021. And I said, well, next month, you have an election in May. I said, so make sure you back up everything on your systems before your next election so you don't lose any of the evidence from your election. She says, well, how do you do that? Imagine, you got the clerk of a county and they don't know how to back up their own systems. I've yet to meet a clerk anywhere in the country that knows how to back up their own systems, okay? This is the problem. We've made systems so complicated that our own auditors, in your case, don't know how to secure, don't know how to run, don't know how to manage their own systems. They don't know how. Okay, so anyway, so I send in a team. But we didn't just do a backup of our system, we did what's called a forensic backup, which means it goes onto the disks in the computer and it copies every bit and byte on everything, so you know everything. What files were there, what's been deleted, the whole 9 yards. Okay, forensic backup. Then Dominion comes in. This happened to be a Dominion county. You've got 8 Dominion counties in your state. Dominion came in and reprogrammed the machine before the election. We sent our team in again. They did complete forensic backup of the machines. Then they held the election, and then after the election, we sent our team in again to back everything up. So we have before, during, and after the election, we have complete forensic backups. All the logs, all the files, all the activity. We even have the source code for how those machines are operating. That turns out to be super important because we proved that her machines were actually manipulating the votes and manipulating the election. It's all discussed in something called the Mesa 3 report, and there's going to be a big movie coming out called Selection Code next month, August 21st. It's going to be released, which goes over the Tina Peters situation. Wouldn't you know it, I happen to be in the right place in that one. It's just I seem to be in the right place at the right time. God knows what he's doing. All right, so that's in Oregon, though, right? But we've got CISA, the Center for Internet Security. It's a federal agency. They're the ones who manage it's called the Albert system. Every county in the country, nearly every county in the country, has what's called an Albert sensor on it. And the purpose of that sensor is to help protect you. It's to help Homeland Security help protect you from malware attacks. That's what it's supposed to be. But actually, it's the doorway through which every county in the country was hacked. You know, so it's the old thing. You know, when the government says we're here to help, you run, right? So all they did is basically enable you to be hacked everywhere. It's sort of like if Norton Security, you install Norton Security on all your laptops or all your computers, and then if Norton was hacked, guess what? Everything is hacked, huh? Everybody could get into everybody. That's sort of that's the situation. And it's a federal agency, and they don't know what they're doing. So there you go. Anyway, so they came out and they released a report describing how all the election systems in our country are vulnerable. Now all the secretaries of states around the country are having to admit it, including this snake from Missouri, Ashcroft, who I call him a snake because he and I had a deal and he broke it. I met with him privately. Oh, I just have to tell you this story. I'm having fun, but I'm teaching you at the same time. So here's what we were doing. In October, November of last year, Mike Lindell and I, and an attorney named Kurt Olson and a hacker, I can't tell you his name, we were flying around the country in his jet. We were visiting secretaries of states. And we would visit, and this is how it would go. Mike would give about 10 minutes, 15 minutes, Mike talks. 15 minutes, he would give them the sales pitch on what we were doing and why we were doing it. Then the attorney, Kurt Olson, would say what the legal strategy was and what we wanted the state AG to do to sign on to the legal strategy. And then I would show the data for that state so that they would understand that they had fraud in their state. And then our white hat hacker would hack into their system and show them that they can be hacked. So we were in Missouri. We went through all those steps, but we didn't have our hacker with us at the time. And so he was up on a Zoom call. And it was in the capital of Missouri. And there's 2 big screens and 30 people in the room. And we had a bunch of clerks from the state, and he starts showing the usernames and passwords for all the clerks in the state, for all the election clerks and the election systems. So this one clerk, he was kind of arrogant. He says, well, my username and password isn't up there. So you hear this click, 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 click coming through the Zoom, right? Suddenly the lights go off in the room, and the lights come on again. And then the hacker says, "Did your lights just go off and on in your room?" We're in the capital of the state of Missouri, and he's just hacked into the building and turned on the lights and off the lights in our room. Okay? And then that arrogant clerk's username and password went by on the screen. Okay. These people are so hacked, they have no idea how hacked they are. Okay? It's just ridiculous. But anyway, that's a fun story. So anyway, at the end of that meeting, Mike was going on. You know how Mike likes to talk.
That's the second time you said that.
He's the only person I ever met in my life who could talk more than me. I guess that's a warning.
No, Mike.
He's a real guy. I love Mike. He's a great guy. So anyway, Mike was talking and Ashcroft had to leave. So I followed Ashcroft out and we're standing in the hallway and I'm shaking his hand and I said, "Look, how many phantom voters do I need to bring you before you launch an investigation?" A phantom voter is somebody who did not vote and we can prove they did not vote, but yet you have a ballot from that person. Okay, maybe it's a dead person and you have a ballot from the dead person. Maybe it's somebody who lives in another country, but you have a ballot from them. Or maybe it's somebody who lives in another state and votes there. Or maybe it's somebody who will swear on an affidavit that they live in your county. They didn't vote. They'll swear on an affidavit, but yet you have a ballot from them. So there's lots of ways you can have a phantom ballot. Essentially, you have a ballot from somebody and it's not really from them. That's a phantom ballot. I said, "How many do you need before you launch an investigation in your state?" He said, "Give me 100. No problem. We got him 100. A couple weekends later, we actually brought him 270. And he wrote it off and just blew it off. He says, "Oh, yeah, we've looked into that. That's nothing." So he didn't launch an investigation. He just blew us off. I think he didn't think we could do it. And then about a month later, we brought him about 350 more. Okay? And that's just with about 20 canvassers working in just a few counties. It's not hard to find once you know what you're doing. Yeah.
How do we know which ones are owned by Soros? Well, we kind of assume he is, but do we know exactly?
I don't have direct evidence, but I know he's a bad guy. Yeah, I'm going to leave it at that. I know too much sometimes, and I'm not supposed to say, but he's not a good guy. Neither is yours. All right, so you guys have ES&S machines in about 1/3 of your counties, and you have the DS200s. This is a picture right out of the lawsuit from Antrim, the Antrim, Michigan lawsuit. You can do this yourself. It's depernolaw.com. You can go there. This is a picture. The judge ordered the machine opened, and when they opened the machines, there's the modem sitting right there, the Telit modem, that's not supposed to be there, right? And this Telit modem can dial out to the cell phone towers. It can hook into the Wi-Fi hotspots. It can do all this sort of thing. What people don't realize is that the machines, for example, in 2019, ES&S shipped about 32,000 internet-ready DS200s. This was in Politico, because this was still during the days when Hillary was complaining that the elections were hacked and they were having federal testimony and they were always bringing attention to all this stuff. The EAC, the Election Assistance Commission, caught ES&S sending machines equipped like this to 32,000 plus customers around the country. And so, actually it's 32,000 machines, 83 customers, some of them whole states. And so the ES&S had to notify them. So I've been going around talking to clerks, and I'll say, "Hey, are you the one did you get one of those machines that has the chip in it?" And they say, "Oh no, Dr. Frank, that's illegal in our state. We don't have that." I said, "Yeah, but they were shipped. You don't know whether you had it or not. It wasn't supposed to be. You may have ordered it right, but it didn't come right." I said, "Let's go check," because I have this frequency analyzer right here. It measures all the EM frequencies coming off of a machine, and we can stand next to the machine. Just turn it on. We'll just see if you have one of the ones that has a modem chip in it. I've yet to have a single clerk willing to do that. So in other words, they sort of know, but their speech is, well, our machines are not connected to the internet, but they know that if they turn it on next to my little sensor, we're going to find that it's online, and they're not going to be happy about it, right? So it's better to not know, right? So anyway, I'm just telling you, right? Yes. So all I want to know is who's going to apologize to Mr. Lindell, right? Because we have For a year and a half, you've been being told that your machines are not online. We've known they're online. I knew they were online because I was working with the Pennsylvania State Legislature, and I got to look at the logs because I was working with the legislature, not against them. So I got to see. So we've known for all this time, but the public story is all, oh no, our machines are not online. Now everybody's begrudgingly having to admit it. Well, guess what else they're begrudgingly having to admit? They're begrudgingly having to admit that their elections were fraudulent too, okay? And that's what's happening. Slow but steady. It's not happening overnight, okay? And you're going to get to hear about Selection Code. That's the movie coming up August 20th. How many of you saw the Cyber Symposium? Oh, good. Good for you. So you know what I'm talking about then. Tina Peters came out during that, announced her participation. So this is going to be a movie about her and her experiences and how she was red-pilled and what's happened to her since and all that sort of thing. This is going to be like the Cyber Symposium. It's going to be in Springfield, Missouri. Mike is hosting it. It's invitation only, but I imagine several of you have been invited. I don't know. The grassroots teams around the country are being invited because it's not merely about the machines and Dominion. It's also about what are the grassroots efforts in every state. So every state is going to have a team there talking about it. This is all going to be recorded and streamed and telecast all over the world. So everybody will know what's happening in every county, or every state, I mean to say. So that's going to be a big event. Okay, more breaking news. Oh yeah, Mastriano won in Pennsylvania. This is important. This is super important. Pennsylvania has this crazy law. Crazy law. It goes like this. You shall not certify any election that has more ballots than voters. They have that. It's in their books. It's just, quote, you shall not certify any election that has more ballots than voters. So 3 weeks after the November 2020 election, Bookvar, Secretary Bookvar, is standing in front of the legislature about to certify. One of the legislators says, oh, excuse me, but you're about to certify this election, but according to the records, it says we have 760,000 more ballots than we have voters. You can't certify this election. And Bookvar is like, well, that's okay. She says, it's COVID. It's always COVID. She says, our clerks just haven't reported yet. Once all the clerks from all the counties report, then all the records will reconcile, and it'll be okay. But think about what she just said. She just said that she knows the books don't reconcile, but she's about to certify it, even though it doesn't reconcile. That happened in your state, too. Your books don't reconcile, yet your legislature and your Secretary of State are certifying your election, even though they don't reconcile. I'm going to show you that. But anyway, they have more ballots than voters. So she says, don't worry after everything gets there. So they went ahead and certified. Oh, that's illegal. And then a week later, more of the counties had reported. They were only down to about 250,000 more ballots than voters. And so it looked, maybe she was right? And then a month later, it was down to like 100,000. And so I think it never got below about 40,000. And the reason I bring this up is because at this meeting, I wasn't the only speaker, but one of the people got up and said, yeah, there were 110,000 more ballots than voters. So our election was certified illegally. This was in Gettysburg. And the media published a response from the Secretary of State of Pennsylvania said, oh no, it was never 110,000. It was only about 40,000. So they're admitting in public that their election was always fraudulent and illegal. Yes? That's why this is important news. Did you hear about that in the media? No. Then you're listening to the wrong media, because we announce that on the Lindell Report at 6 o'clock every night, okay? And I call in all the time. I say, hey, Mike, guess what I just found? Oh, you got to be on the Lindell Report tonight. So you know how Mike is. So he'll have me on, and then there you go. So that's news. Injunctions. We're filing injunctions all over the country. They're big news this week. What's an injunction? So you're about to have an election in your state, right? And Bernie's running, and Ann maybe, and other people. Laura. Not Laura, you're not running. So a bunch of you running. Well, do you want to use these election systems in your election? No, you're going to get ripped off if you do, right? You can do all that work, all that canvassing work, all that door knocking, spend all that money, and then somebody's going to steal the election from you.
Do they have a choice?
Yes. You file an injunction against using the machines. So you go to court, you go stand before a judge, and you say, I don't want these machines used in my election because here's the evidence that they're hackable and that they are manipulatable in their elections, and we don't want them used in our elections. And so the judge then can say, okay, temporary restraining order, you can't use those machines. All you need to do is get a few of you together. Well, we've filed these now in 3 states. And the first big hearing was just this last week, I think it was Thursday morning, in Arizona, because Kari Lake is running for governor and Mark Finchem is running for Secretary of State. They're the plaintiffs in that case. And so they have standing, right? Your candidates have standing. You have standing to file suit against using the machines. We've filed them now in 3 states, and you're going to be surprised who some of our plaintiffs are. In some of our states, we've got like governors who are going to be plaintiffs in these cases. So this is happening all over the country. This is not just, local things, but this is all. Yes, sir.
Are they going to say that it's the law that they can use those machines? Because that's what our auditors said. That if we want to get rid of machines, it's the law.
So you need to read your own state law. Because your own state law says if you have less than, where are you? Less than 35, Sandy, by the way, she's a good legislator. Yeah. There always seems to be at least 1 or 2 good ones in every state, and she seems like a good one. But you need to read the law. I think the law says if you have 3,500 or less in a city or a school district, you don't have to use the electronic systems. Your own state law says that. Oh, but that isn't what your auditor told you. Your own auditor probably doesn't even know.
That's not precinct, though. It's city or school system, not precinct.
Yeah. Well, but you've got a lot of small counties. You'll be fine. In Wisconsin, they've got a state law that says if you have less than 7,500 in the population in the county, you don't have to use any electronic systems at all. They have 30 counties that meet that criteria. So all around the country, there are all kinds of communities that are opting out. You just need to know your own state law. But let me put it back to you this way. What if it were state law that you had to use the systems? What if it were state law that you had to rape the children in your community? Would you do it? No, don't do it. Then you need to be a conscientious objector, don't you? You know it's ethically wrong to do a fraudulent election. So don't do it. Stand up. And you just need your sheriff. So if you have a county with a good sheriff, you're in great shape because your sheriff will stand up for you, especially if you show them evidence of fraud. Yes, sir.
Question about the small counties. The rub usually comes in the larger counties, like in urban areas.
Right.
And so are those counties with large populations required?
Yeah, in your state they are. But let me just talk to you a little bit about strategy. So the strategy I'm finding is working around the country. I made the mistake at the beginning. I assumed if I go to the legislature, I show them evidence, they agree that they'll fix it. I'm wrong. That doesn't work. If you show evidence, okay, I'm going to tell you another story. I'm teaching you by telling you stories, right? So I was in a big state, not far from here, big state. And I was with the state senator and the head clerk for the state, elections clerk. And we sat down, it was a Thursday morning at 10 o'clock. And the clerk launches right into an immediate defense of all of his election systems and how secure they are and all about his machines. And after about 10 minutes, I just said, I'm not here to talk about your machines. Oh, really, Dr. Frankie? I thought that you were here. Well, everybody thinks that because of Mike, because Mike's after the machines. I work with Mike, but I talk about the rolls. I say, no, I'm here to talk to you about your voter rolls. Really? What about them? I said, I think your elections are being hacked through your voter rolls. Tens of thousands of ballots are being stuffed in all of your counties around your state by using the voter rolls. And he looks at me, why do you think that? So I got out my slides and I started showing him the evidence. And after about 10 minutes, he leans back in his chair. Yeah, we know we have tens of thousands of ballots being stuffed in all of our elections. The senator sitting next to me looks at her mouth falls open. She says, what? She says, you know this? Why aren't you telling the clerks? This is a direct quote. You ready? I'll never forget this as long as I live. Quote, if we told our clerks how many ballots were being stuffed in their elections, the whole state would blow up and everyone would lose faith in our elections. Unquote.
Oh my God.
Unquote. Okay, that was Thursday morning. And then this is the the ironic thing about it, he then launches into this, I mean, he's like proud of the fact that he knows all the voting fraud lore of his state for decades. Oh yeah, this county, they had a ballot stuffing race, multiple races, decades worth. He knows all the lore in his state, right? Okay, so that's the first half of the story, okay? The next morning, Friday morning, I'm with the Secretary of State. No, sorry, the Attorney General of that same state. Following morning, I'm meeting there to get a signature on the lawsuit that we're trying to get to before the Supreme Court. And Mr. Lindell gives his pitch, the attorney gives his pitch, then I start to show the data, and the Attorney General says, don't worry, Dr. Frank, you don't have to show me the data. Oh, I need to show you how you've been stolen, and the fraud. And he says, no. He says, we already know we have tens of thousands of ballots being stuffed in all of our counties, unquote. It's not that they don't know. It's just that for our legislators to admit that their elections are fraudulent is a huge problem. Imagine if you decertified 2020 election, it's not just about Trump and Biden. It's about all those down-ballot races. All those people that ran races that are saying, hey, I should have won that. Something's wrong with this election. It's a huge can of worms to open that can of worms. So nobody wants to open that can. And our legislators hate Trump. I'm telling you, all over the country, they don't like Trump. So nobody wants to touch that one with a 10-foot pole. They all want to say, well, we're just going to try to fix it for the future. Yeah, right. Poor Sandy, she's been trying to fix your elections for the future too. I liken it to you go to the doctor and you got cancer, right? And the doctor says, well, we found 20 tumors in your body. We're going to take out 6. Take them all out, right? Or you're dead, right? You've got to take them all out. Well, the problem is Sandy's going in there and saying, hey, we need this. Well, we're not going to do that. We're not. They only get a few of the laws passed that you need. If your election's not secure, your election's not secure. It's death by 1,000 cuts. So what? You got rid of a third of them. You're still dying. You gotta fix your elections. So anyway, that's what the injunctions are all about. And I think you have everything you need to file an injunction in your state. You've got candidates that are interested. You've got evidence. You've got motivation. Let's make it happen. File an injunction here.
When do they file this injunction?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow, Bernie. Friday. You got until Friday.
I think you need to get your ducks in a row.
Right.
Get organized, get an attorney. You need an attorney because you can't do that yourself. Get an attorney who's willing to stick their necks out. And because any attorneys that take these cases on, a lot of them get disbarred or threatened with disbarment.
So you cannot get anybody then?
So, well, you have to try, right? You have to somebody with some guts. It's exactly, you have to have courage and backbone, absolutely. So that's what's happening all around the country. We've already filed them. If South Dakota is imminent, we're going to file a case, about 10 more in process. So that's big news. What's basically been enabling that is that the Mesa 3 report came out, and that's Jeff O'Donnell's analysis of the forensic images that we got in Mesa County showing how the elections were manipulated. So if you're in a Dominion County, you got it made, because this is like brilliant evidence that your elections are hacked. And Dominion's response to this, their public response is, oh yeah, that was an isolated incident. That software on that machine was, had a flaw in it. Oh yeah? Well, guess what? They all have the same software. So it's a problem. All right. I want to tell you one more story and then I'll get you into some data. I'm giving you the news from around the country, right, that you never hear. I need to tell you this story because you need to understand this is the climate you're in. These guys, they tried to get him off the ballot. Anybody who speaks out about elections, they try to get you off the ballot. There are repercussions. If you stick your neck out, they come after you. Here's Tatum Lee. She's from Kansas. I got to testify in Kansas because the public really is all worked up in Kansas. It's awesome. I've testified twice before the Senate Election Committee in Kansas and once before the House Election Committee. And the Senate committee there loves me. In fact, they're doing an audit there now. I don't really like the audit they're doing, but at least they're trying, we've won them over and they're starting to do things. The House hates my guts. I was testifying there because they had to have me in because of the way their law works, so they were very unhappy. In fact, the night before, the head of the committee called me. He says, if you make any accusations tomorrow, I'm ending the hearing right then. It's like, I'm just going to show you your own data, okay? So anyway, I gave my talk, about 35 minutes formal talk, and then they started asking me questions, and they had about an hour to ask me questions. And this is televised, statewide, all on public TV. It's a big thing. About 10 minutes into the talk, into the questions, Tatum Lee, she's there, she's a freshman legislator, she holds up these 2 reports. She says, hey guys, I like her, she's sweet. She says, did you know about these 2 reports? I only just found out about them today. She says, this one's from 2018 and this one's from 2020. These are reports commissioned by this committee to our own House of Kansas Research Department on the election security in our state. Here, this one's dated 2018, and it lists all these areas of potential vulnerability and some fraud that's already starting to occurring in our state in 2018. She says, in this report, dated 2020, she says, everybody flip to page 7. Look at these bullet points here. That's almost verbatim what Dr. Frank just told us is happening in our state. You could hear a pin drop in that room. And I just thought, dude, I just won. I just won the state of Kansas because their own research department had already pre-confirmed everything I found and showed them in public testimony. Yes? So here's why I'm telling you the story. The very next morning, the representatives, the House of Representatives of Kansas voted on a new redistricting map and eliminated her district. If you stand up against the House, if you stand up against elections in this country, in any of our legislatures, you are a pariah. And I bet you can tell us stories.
They divided my House district in 4 different directions with the redistricting map that came out. And so that's why I going to run in the Senate.
So, in other words, this is not a unique story. Wait a minute, isn't your legislature Republican? Wait a minute. This is not about Republicans and Democrats. Do not misinterpret me. This is about us versus them. They own our elections and they ain't giving them up, okay, without a fight, okay? And anybody who questions that, they're going to come down hard on you. Yes, dear? Well, the legislatures, okay, so first rule of government, right? You never give the government power because if you do, you never get it back. And I always make the joke, even for 3 weeks to flatten the curve. You never give them power. Well, right now they own, capital O, own your elections. Okay, they own everything about it. Nobody can audit them. They control everything about it. And they won't even show you inside the machines. They won't show you the rolls. They can tell you to jump in the lake. They own, and they're not going to give them back easy. Why is that the case? Because government craves power. So part of the they is the system where it's grown into the system where we have a lot of corrupt legislators who are in control of their states. Okay, it's not a pretty picture. Many of the they are controlled people, and I can tell you stories I'd rather not, about people who are in senior positions throughout the country who are very controlled, and they'll tell you in private how they're controlled and why they're controlled. It's a bad situation. Then there's also the they. When I was working with Pennsylvania, I could see the logs of who was logging into the database, and 80% of the manipulation was happening with a login of the Hillary Clinton campaign. In 2020, and I thought, what's that strange? I thought Hillary Clinton campaign was over in 2016. Why is this in 2020? Well, the Pennsylvania legislators explained to me that in 2015, they hired the Hillary Clinton campaign to write an API, it's called, Application Programming Interface, that to help do research, to help register voters in their state. And all it did is give them back-end access to the voter rolls, complete manipulation of that. So the Hillary Clinton campaign, Rock the Vote, a bunch of their NGOs are also the they. In the 2020 election, I would think the biggest driver was the Soros money through CTCL and Zuckerberg, the Center for Tech and Civic Life. We have tons of hard evidence that took place. Some of it we testified in Wisconsin December 8th. See, if you don't know this, you're watching the wrong news, because we've talked about this at length in the right news. Fox is not your friend, by the way. So if you're watching Fox, you're not getting the truth. Yes, sir?
Back to your comment about legislatures that are controlled.
Yeah.
Not controlling control, right?
Mm-hmm.
So someone has control over that.
Yep. Yep. In Kansas, I got a long story about how they control the legislators there. It's not a pretty picture. It's the I like to make the metaphor. You could pay somebody to raise your children, but you should do it yourself with your own two hands because it's that important and the outcome's way better, right? Well, it's the same way with our government. We've been paying other people to run our government. We're supposed to be the government. We, the people. It's supposed to be inconvenient. It's supposed to be annoying that I have to drop doing what I'm doing and go serve for a couple of years and then go back to my farm, right? It's supposed to be. But we've all allowed this to happen for decades now, and I'm going to show you data from your own state that shows this has been happening to you for decades to get you into this mode where you just think it's all normal, but you're totally controlled. Okay, then I'm going to show you your data for your own state. Oh, yes, sir.
Has anybody written anything about developing a system of internal controls that are fraud? In any state, or articles, or research articles, or because in our data group, we have come to the conclusion someone needs to do that and then apply it because we know that there's no internal controls for voting in the state of Iowa.
No.
We have known that for several decades.
No, and you're not alone. There's no single state, there's no state in the country that has auditing of their election systems. They say they have audits, but they're not. They're little check. It's like asking your dad to check in your checkbook for you. You need to have external audits, and it's the only division in your government that isn't audited. Why aren't your elections audited? But anyway, we need to run our own elections with our own hands, with our own eyes, just like we need to be running our own schools, and just like we need to be running our own elections and government. We need to be doing it, government ourselves. Yeah.
How about this pencil and paper?
Vote Amish. All paper, no electronics. I've been saying that's my simple way to explain it. And in Ohio, 60,000 Amish people came out and voted in 2020. They'd never voted before. 60,000. They all showed up on one day. They voted on paper. Why can't we do that?
Also, they said that those millions of ballots on all paper being counted by human beings would be open it up to too much fraud and.
Yeah, the difference is that if there's fraud like that, which there can be fraud, of course, there can always be fraud, but that's why you need to have your own eyes on it, and you need to be policing it yourself. It's that important. The difference is that in order to have fraud with paper and pencil in Iowa, you have to be here to do it. The way the system is now, I can hack your election from Ohio. Why am I making? I can hack it from anywhere in the world. Okay, I can manipulate your election from anywhere. So the problem is having electronic just makes it anywhere. Anybody who has the skills can hack in. So you should be paper because you can at least control paper. And you should control it locally because I've met so many clerks who know every person on their rolls. And they're awesome to work with. And they'll say, oh yeah, I know my 1,500 people. And I'm the one who gave them a ballot. If they needed it mailed to it, I mailed it to them. The whole thing. I've worked with so many clerks. And those are my heroes. Since I'm telling that story, I was with a small county, 1,600 voters in western Nebraska. And I had one supermom there. I call them supermoms. In World War II, the men went off to fight, and the ladies were the riveters. In this war, it seems like the women are doing the fighting, and the men are the riveters this time. It seems like all over the country we have supermoms. It's amazing. Anyways, this one supermom, she did some canvassing, and she found in this one small county with 1,600 people, 16 people who had voted by mail who got their ballot not from the clerk. The ballot came from a different source, and we proved that to that clerk, and she was livid because she's one of these, I've been doing this for 30 years. Don't tell me there's fraud in my election, she's one of those people, right? There's another funny clerk like that. She's in Pennsylvania. She says, I've turned off every automatic feature in all my systems. I've studied all the manuals. I keep paper logs of everything. And she was there with her deputy clerk. We know they're doing this. We just can't figure out how. So they're trying their best, but they just can't stop it. You have to have it on paper. As soon as it's electronic, you're out of your control. All right.
But we start with paper. So does that help?
What?
We start with the paper ballot.
I'll explain it
Okay.
right now.
Okay.
Did you see 2,000 Mules?
Yes.
Okay. So I like 2,000 Mules, and I don't like 2,000 Mules. My favorite thing about it is that they called Eric Metaxas called him Prager a coward. That's my favorite thing about it. Remember at the beginning, Prager says, "Oh, I'm agnostic on the topic of election fraud." What a doofus. Anybody who's been paying attention knows we have massive amounts of election fraud in our country. So that's my favorite part of the movie. But also, I love it that they show the stuffing. Since I started in Pennsylvania and I was able to find the fraud in Pennsylvania, I was able to figure out, and we were able to do the canvassing that supported it, that the way they're stealing our elections is with ballot stuffing. And I've been telling everybody that for a year and a half now, and I'm going to explain it in more detail, and I'll show you how they're doing it. But what I love about it, the movie, is it's showing you what I've been telling everybody is happening, okay? They're stuffing ballots. Okay, so I love that about the movie. What I don't like about the movie is they don't tell you the most important thing about the stuffing of the ballots. Every one of those ballots going into the box has a name assigned to it. How did they know which name to use? If you understand this idea, you will know how to fix your elections. Any system which tells anybody who has voted is bad, because then you know who hasn't voted. So then you know who to stuff ballots for. Okay? You can't have any system that tells. So every one of those ballots, now some of them are harvested. In fact, they have about a $10 a ballot street value. People can follow the USPS truck delivering ballots and scarf them up. They're about $10 a piece. They're worth the street value. But most of the ballots that we see stuffed around the country are printed. And that's not a big deal. To print ballots is very simple, and print the envelopes that go with them, everything. It's a straightforward operation. So that's what I like about it. So ballot stuffing. So I'm going to explain that a little bit. Now remember, the key idea is every stuffed ballot has to be assigned to a voter in the rolls. So let's say you need to stuff a bunch more ballots. You just have to go to the rolls and find out who you know isn't going to vote. Or if you don't have enough, stick some more people in the rolls. After all, you have access to the rolls. Just put some more in there, which is what we see happening all over the country, including you. Yeah, if you don't have enough voters, add some more. Okay. So after 2,000 Mules came out, 2 weeks later, March 24th, True the Vote, which is one that did 2,000 Mules, was featured in that. They went to Wisconsin and filed suit for about 130 ballot mules there as well. But this is important because this is just supporting evidence in Wisconsin for what had just happened. I need to tell you about Wisconsin, more news, and I'll show you some data. So I met in this private meeting with Speaker Robin Vos, Speaker of the House of Wisconsin. It was me, Sean Smith, the colonel who's in charge of Air Force cybersecurity, and John Eastman, who's one of the country's leading experts on the Constitution. He was 45's constitutional go-to guy. Okay? Three of us and Robin Vos. So Sean first showed, for about the first 10 minutes, hour and a half meeting, showed Speaker Vos how he could hack into their machines a whole bunch of different ways. And then I went into showing all the fraud numerically in the state. After about 20 minutes or so, he said, Dr. Frank, he says, I just don't believe we have fraud in our state. Widespread fraud. How can you say that after all the evidence I've shown you, and you got the Gableman report and all these things happening in your state? How can you possibly believe that? He says, because we've done recounts in our 3 largest counties, and all the recounts come out the same. They all come out right. That sounds familiar. You stupid Secretary of State. They did multiple recounts. It's one of the bullet points on here. So I looked at him and I said, sir, I'm just sitting like this close. Sir, doesn't matter how many times you count the cash in the register. What matters is how many of the bills are counterfeit. And when I said that to him, he's like, oh. It's like it only just dawned on him. Think about it. This is the Speaker of the House or our legislature. Now, Sandy, she's on top of things. But most of our legislators don't have a clue what's going on. Yeah, but you're teaching them what's going on in your state. They don't understand their own information. So he came out of that meeting, and it was supposed to be a private meeting, but the media had found out about it. There were 10 television cameras waiting for us outside the meeting. He got out and stood in front of 10 television cameras and admitted to the world that there's widespread fraud in Wisconsin. That's huge news. And if you didn't hear that, you're listening to the wrong news, because I was that night on Frank's speech telling the news to everybody. Okay, we're spreading the news everywhere, but you're not hearing it. Okay. So after he's like, well, wait a minute, how are they doing it then, Dr. Frank? And I said, and I'm explaining to you now, so you'll understand how they're doing it in your state as well. I said, here's a record of the 3 largest counties in your state from 2009 to present, the number of people in your voter rolls. I want you to notice that before every election, for example, here's a 2012 election, before the election, they inflate your voter rolls. And the people vote, and then you take them back out of the rolls again. Here's the midterm. You don't need as many phantom voters in that, so they don't stuff it as bad. And they clean it up. And then look, right before 2016, you filled it right up again. But and after the election, you remove 25% of your voters. Can you imagine removing 1/4 of your voters after the election? And then they're all back by 2020. Why are they doing that? Why are they manipulating your rolls? Well, because if you have a bunch of names in the rolls that you know are not real voters, you can stuff ballots for them. It gives you a bunch of names that you can stuff ballots for. It gives you manipulation. So I showed him this, and Speaker Voss said, well, gee, Dr. Frank, yeah, but that's just my 3 largest counties. I said, well, let's look at all your counties. All 88. I'm about to show you all 99 of yours. Every county in your state is manipulated. Every county, okay? Not as extreme as this, but this is a good example, but every county. So I'm going to show you the same thing, and I'll get to that in a minute. So in a nutshell then, how are they stealing your elections? Beforehand, somebody decides what they want the outcome to be, and they inflate the registration databases. Why? It gives you a bunch of names you can use to stuff ballots for. That's what happens before the election. During the election, that gives you a credit line of phantom voters, in other words. During the election, they hack and track. You need to know where you stand so you know how many ballots to stuff. If you know how far you are behind, you know how many more ballots you need to stuff, yes? So the machines don't have to change tallies. The machines just have to report tallies. But in some cases, we've caught them actually changing tallies as well, like in the Mesa County thing. And then after the election, we have to do what we call the cleanup, or some people call it the eharmony.com, where they have to pair up ballots with voters. So beforehand, you've got you inflate the rolls. During the election, you track and stuff. And then afterwards, you clean up the evidence. That's in a nutshell. So tomorrow when you're explaining this to your friends, you can say, gee, they're inflating the rolls. And I'm going to give you some examples of that. So, oh yeah, I got to mention this too, because your state in particular is particularly bad in this category. If you're using electronic poll books, if you're checking in people electronically, the world knows immediately every person who's voted. They don't even try to hide the fact that the poll books are online. In fact, one of your counties, I don't remember which one, ES&S County, your poll books went offline and it was a big panic and they had to vote on paper or something like that. I don't remember which one of your counties it was, several. But anyway, they don't even deny that the poll books are online. But think about it. Any way of knowing who's voted tells you who's not voted, so you know who to vote for. In real time. And you have electronic poll books. In fact, you have the ES&S poll books in 1/3 of your counties. And the EAC in the summer of 2020 discovered a huge flaw in the ES&S poll books and told 19 state secretaries of states that there was this huge vulnerability. In fact, EAC said your poll books are a hacker's paradise. So I have a copy of one of those emails I'll just show you for your own state. Here it is, Heidi Berharns, Secretary of State, Iowa Gov, from ES&S. It's potentially worse than that. It's a gift-wrapped opportunity to an insider threat. This is before the election. Your Secretary of State knew your poll books were vulnerable to hacking, and it was a gift-wrapped opportunity for fraud. Your Secretary of State knew it before the election and used them anyway. Yeah? Attention, folks. Yes, we're about to take off. We've discovered a problem with our engine, but we're going to, we'll fix it on the next trip. No way. You should never have used these electronic systems in your election, but you did. Your Secretary of State authorized use of machines knowing full well they were totally hackable. Okay? Mail-in ballots are bad. What percentage of mail-in ballots did you guys have in Iowa? I don't remember that. Do you know? Do you have a lot? 16%? 60% are mail-in? Oh my gosh. Horrible. Let me tell you why mail-in ballots are bad. I'm glad you told me that. In Ohio, it's 56%, so, we're better than you. Here's the problem. If you're a politician, you can buy a subscription service from the USPS, and they'll tell you every ballot that was mailed out. Why would you want that? Because you're running for office, you send a postcard chasing every one of those ballots to advertise your campaign. You can also buy the list of every ballot that's been mailed back from the USPS. They sell this service. Why? Because it's useful to you. You don't want to go knock on a door where somebody's already returned their ballot. You want to knock on the door for people who haven't returned their ballots yet. So they sell that service. The USPS sells that service. But think about that. They can sell you a list of everybody who a ballot was mailed out but hasn't been returned yet. And that's perfectly legal. And you can have that list. And if you have that list, you can print ballots for all those people and stuff them in ballot boxes. Does that make sense? It's such a dumb idea to have mail-in ballots. It's a dumb idea. Don't do it. If you can go to the grocery store, you can vote. Okay? All right. I mentioned the Milwaukee. Did I mention the Milwaukee to you guys? So we testified to this December 8th last year. The Milwaukee clerk wrote an email. We have copies of these emails to her and to her colleagues in Milwaukee saying, we're going to fail our audit next week, which was 3 weeks after the election. We're going to fail our audit because we received 120,000 more ballots than we mailed out. And that was through the mail-in records, because they could prove the mail-in records that, anyway. Mail-in ballots, bad idea. Show up in person with your photo ID. Vote. Okay. All right. The machines, I already talked about the machines. Okay. All right, Pennsylvania, I already talked about Pennsylvania. So what can you do? I'm going to tell you the solution now, and then I'll show you some data. Because you got to buy pillows. And his slippers. I got his slippers too. They're awesome. I don't have a promo code. Mike asked me if I wanted one, but I don't want one. He's spending his own money. Okay, he flies that jet around. That's his own money. I think he spent probably $30 or $40 million already of his own money on this. Okay, this is his own money, and if he can do that, I can spend my own money. He inspired me at the beginning. He made that movie about me, Scientific Proof, in the early days, and that's in March of 2021, and that's when I learned about him, what he was doing, and he inspired me to do the same thing. So I don't charge for any of this. All this work I do around the country, I do for no charge. All I ask is for you pay for my plane tickets and my hotels, and you cover my expenses, and that's why they charge at the door, so they can pay for this facility and pay for my plane tickets. So I appreciate you donating to them. And it's not about money to me, in other words, and I want to keep it that way. That's why I don't have a promo code. I don't want there to be any doubt in your mind that I'm here for the right reasons, okay? I'm here because we're fighting for our country, yeah.
I'm with the Lynn County Absentee Ballot Board.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned about this USPS. Well, we had things coming from the military. There is no...
Military's different.
That's what, so how can you...
But the military's what, it can be 1%?
Well, we have a lot. That's why I get in trouble, because I question things.
Well, no, it's even if you had 5% military ballots, I would count every one of those. Our military people deserve to vote. If they can send me their vote on a napkin, as far as I'm concerned, we're going to count it, because our military people, they deserve a ballot.
Well, but I was thinking, can they also be staff?
Of course they can.
Because there's no staff there.
In fact, we've uncovered tons of military fraud in the election across the country, and General Flynn and I have worked with several organizations to try to see if we can fix that up in future elections as well. It's you steal my vote, I'm mad. You steal a military guy's or gal's vote, now I'm double mad. Those people are serving our country right now. And when I was young, I got to go to college and be a physicist and go on scholarship. I never served in the military, so this is my turn to serve my country right now. That's what I'm doing. So buy pillows. He's a good guy. You're helping him pay. He every once in a while he'll send a jet and pick me up, take me here, take me there, because important things. So he's a good guy. Yeah. In Gettysburg, Mike said, if you waiting for a rainy day to stand up, he says it's pouring outside. We're way past this. My calculations say we lost our country in 2018 already. You've already lost your state. You're saying we're going to lose it. No, you already lost it. We're trying to get it back now before it's too late, okay? And it's going to be too late pretty fast here. So now these super moms in Pennsylvania, gosh, like I said, there's a super mom in every state that's just changed in the country. Tony Shoup's her name. She said, education is key, the fix is local. I mentioned that to you already. You're going to be able to take action locally when we're done here today. Super moms are saving our country. Absolutely. So here's the first thing you can do personally. You need to do this. I was with Eric Metaxas a couple weeks ago in Pennsylvania. He's awesome. I don't want to get distracted, so I want to get on topic here. He described what's called the Golden Triangle of Freedom. I had never heard of it before, but it was a dominant idea during the Federalist Papers during the founding of our country. And the idea is, in order to have freedom, you have to have virtue. Because you have to be able to govern yourself. Okay? You have to have virtue to govern. If I'm going around raping and pillaging, now we need government and laws, and you need to regulate. But if I can regulate myself, then you can have freedom, right? So in order to have freedom, you have to have virtue. In order to have virtue, you have to have faith. In order to have faith, you have to have freedom. So this triangle, Golden Triangle of Freedom, was dominating our thinking. If we want to have freedom in our country, we have to have virtue. So we got to have virtue. And he described how George Whitefield was going up and down the East Coast preaching, and there was this first great awakening in America. It was a huge gospel reawakening in our country. And de Tocqueville, the famous historian, came to America and saw us, and he went back to Europe and he wrote about it, and he said, no wonder, he says, those people in America, they're virtuous. No wonder their government will trust them with a republic. Remember the story of Benjamin Franklin, what kind of government have you given us? We've given you a republic if you can keep it. Okay? We're losing our country because we've lost our virtue. We don't know the difference between an innie and an outie. We don't know. We are killing our children. We are teaching ridiculous things in our schools. We've lost virtue. We need to get a spine. We need to stand up. We need to be virtuous again. We need to do that, or we're not going to have a country anymore. Another thing you can do, you need to get involved in your local precincts. You need to be precinct captain, precinct committeemen and committee women. That's how you take back the Republican Party. That's what you need to be doing. There's all kinds of vacancies. You can run unopposed. They don't even put you on the ballot. They just appoint you because you step up. It's a piece of cake, and this is how you take back your party. You need to take this back. Precinctstrategy.com. Okay? One of the penalties for refusing to participate in politics is that you end up being governed by your inferiors. That's Plato. And that's not just true intellectually. It's true ethically and morally. If you don't get involved, you're going to be dominated by criminals. Okay? Okay. Okay, so one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you to go out and go canvassing, and I'm going to help you do that. And after you go canvassing, you're going to find a bunch of fandom voters. What do you do once you have the phantom voters? Well, you grab your sheriff and you show him the fraud, and he verifies that you found the fraud, you've got affidavits, you go see your county official and you say, your county auditor, and you say, look at all this fraud we found. How come you're running elections with all this fraud in them? We don't want to run our elections this way anymore. And they say, jump in the lake. What power do you have as a citizen? Baby, you got power. Your elected officials have bonds that protect them from lawsuits. You can sue them for those bonds. They're called surety bonds. All you have to do is FOIA your Secretary of State and find out who owns the bond on all your officials. You get to keep the money if you win. You don't need an attorney. You can sue them, okay? And you get to keep the money. It's like $100,000 on most of these people. Good money, go for it. But I'll tell you now, it probably won't work. Here's why. This is why, what happens. The bonding companies are wise to this, right? And they've figured out that all these election clerks and election auditors in your state around the country have done all these illegal things. And they're writing letters to them saying, if it comes out in court that you did anything illegal, we're not paying your bond. So they're personally liable for the money you're suing them for, right? So let's say you bring the evidence to your county auditor, and the county auditor says, jump in the lake, so you sue them. They quit. Because they don't want to be liable for.
The Secretary of State right now.
Who is it?
Our county auditor.
Sue them. Anyway, bonds for the win. It works. 2/3 of the clerks in Pennsylvania have already quit. And around the country, in Kansas, they've replaced multiple school boards this way. Because you sue the school board people for doing something illegal, like having CRT taught in the school when it's not supposed to be here. You just find something they did illegal and you sue them for it, they quit. This gives the citizen huge power, okay? It's a good power. Bondsforthewin.com, yeah.
If you can find an attorney.
No, you don't need an attorney for this. No, go to Bonds for the Win. It teaches you everything you need to do. A citizen has this. No attorney needed. No. Go read Bonds for the Win. Okay, that's a whole nother meeting.
Is this like a notary thing where you have present a statement of evidence?
Yeah.
Is that the same thing?
Similar, and that's discussed on here. You bring that evidence to court, and you say, I'm suing John Smith because John Smith did this illegal thing. And then now it's a court case, and you can win $100,000.
And it has to go before a judge.
Yeah, it's a court case. You're filing a civil suit.
And they won in Pennsylvania, is that what you're telling me?
No, they quit in Pennsylvania. It won't go to the judge because they quit.
Did they get the money or not?
No. That's why I gave you that caveat. Because they quit. What I'm telling you is if you have a county commissioner or an elected official that or somebody who is not cooperating with your fraud investigation, sue them. If they don't quit, good for you. You'll get $100,000. But that's not what I see. What I usually see is they quit because they don't want to be personally liable because the bonding companies are telling them if you did anything illegal, we're not paying. So all I'm telling you is it gives you power. It empowers the citizen, and you don't need an attorney. You can file a civil lawsuit.
Can't you also be held liable if the judge rules against you? Aren't you liable for something?
Well, you're suing them for their bond. Yeah, they might come back at you for your court costs.
Because a friend of mine has told me about this.
Oh, okay.
And he said, oh, you should go to the notary and present this case.
Yeah.
Because I've done a lot of
If it's frivolous, yeah, you're going to be in trouble. Don't do a frivolous lawsuit. Find some real evidence and go. Yeah. And that's why I'm going to help you get some good evidence. You're going to go canvassing. Yeah.
That's my next question is what's the best way to get
That's what I'm going to tell you. Canvassing. Next slide. Imagine that. Our minds are flowing right together. Are you having fun? I'm having fun. Okay. Canvassing is important for two reasons. First, you need to find phantom voters. And I'm going to give you lists or help you get lists. You're already connected to the right people. Your team leaders here that are here already have access to the right people. We're going to have lists for you to go canvassing. And the lists are pretty efficient. So when you go knock on doors, you're going to hit a lot. You're going to find a lot of phantom voters. If you had 40 volunteers, 2 Saturday afternoons, I bet you'd have a couple of hundred phantom voters. Okay? That's not a lot of work in a given county, okay? So it's pretty good. And what I usually find is about 100 phantom voters about what people will settle on as enough. So that's the first purpose of canvassing. You need the evidence. That's fraud, evidence of fraud. You have phantom voters, people who are dead, but you have a ballot. People who will swear out an affidavit, they didn't vote, but yet you have a ballot from them. You need 100 of those. The second thing is it's evangelism, and here's why. When you're standing at a door and you knock on the door and you say, "Hi, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, you know, I'm with the Election Integrity Committee, and I'd like to ask you some questions. How many people live here? How many registered to vote here? Did you vote in 2020? Just ask simple questions, right? You're not being too aggressive. And they'll say, "Well, why are you asking all these questions?" You turn your clipboard around and you show them and say, "Well, the rolls say that there are 6 people that are registered to vote here, and 5 of them voted." And Mr. and Mrs. Smith say, "Who are those other 4 people?" And at that moment, Mr. and Mrs. Smith realize voter fraud is taking place from their house. You just converted somebody. They just got saved. And what they do is they go around the neighborhood and they tell everybody in their neighborhood, and you're going to find one in every neighborhood, okay? This is how we're going to, spread the gospel here, all right? It works. But there's also something else that happens. It happens to you. When you knock on the door and you find the phantom voters, you tell all your friends. It's not just some abstract thing Dr. Frank told you about. You found it with your own hands. And that's very motivating. Because this is real. This fraud is real. And I just found it. I got to tell you a story. I was just in Dallas, I don't know, a month ago. It was a group of wealthy GOP people. They had me in. It's 30 people at this exclusive place. It was nice. And I gave the talk, and 2/3 of the way, I was about here in the talk, and one of the ladies raised her hand. She says, "Yes, we did canvassing, and while we were doing canvassing, I decided to check my own records. And I discovered that there are 10 people registered who voted from my own house, who I don't know who they are." It was perfect, because I got 30 people in the room, and here's a lady who has 10 phantom voters from her own house. And so I said, "How do you other people feel that 10 of your votes were nullified by a phantom ballot? How do you feel about that?" It's real. Your votes are being stolen from you by phantom ballots being stuffed. It was a perfect example. So that's why canvassing is important, and we'll help you with that. And it needs to happen because it spreads the word and it gives you the hard evidence. It's the way that's working all around the country. All right, next thing, I'm giving you stuff to do, but I'm also teaching you at the same time, right? Reconciliation. So here's the thing I want you to do. Your county auditor will hate you, but you need to do this. So you're asking, do their records reconcile? And this is what you do. You go to Secretary of State report, and you look up, pretend you're in Smith County. I don't think there is one, but just pretend. And it says that 1,100 people voted in the 2020 election from Smith County. Where did they get that number? The county auditor reported that to them. Okay, that's how many. So you go to the county auditor and you say, I would like to have a list of everyone who voted in the 2020 election. Very simple question. Don't make it more complicated than that. May I have a list of everybody who voted in the 2020 election? And they'll give you a list. And the list will only have 1,000 names in it. So then you go back to them and you say, "Thank you for that list, but who are the other 100 people that voted in our election? I asked you for a list of everybody who voted in our election. It's missing 100. Your hand."
You'll say it's people that have a subpoena or they're protected people.
10%?
Well, there's a lot of people who are being abused.
I've heard that one. The other one I hear is people have moved away, people have died, people, are inactive voters. I've heard that one too. 10%, that's an awful lot. I don't think that's real. I even had the deputy, I think I told you about the Deputy Secretary of State in Nebraska. He said, "Oh, but Dr. Frank, you have to realize we're in the middle of a pandemic. And, we had people dying of COVID. So that's why all these people are missing from the rolls." Just so happens, that's the Deputy Secretary of State saying this in a meeting with 9 other senators, okay? I couldn't believe it. I said, well, you just happen to be talking to the wrong guy, because for a year, and where are you? You were tracking me during COVID? Where are you? Somebody was tracking me during, yes, Barb. She was tracking me. I was putting up the COVID numbers for every county in the country all during 2020. I had 150,000 people following me on social media every day. They took it all down before the election because they couldn't stand me giving. And it's all gone. No, Facebook and YouTube, all those people, taken me down. But I had the numbers. So I said, well, you asked the wrong guy. And I just happened to have it right here. Click, 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 click. And I brought up their own state and their own county and showed, 15,000 people. They were claiming 15,000 people had died of COVID. And it was like 300 that month. Okay. So I just happened to have the numbers. In other words, and I try to say this politely, but there's really only one way to do it. You ladies, you got to put the B on the chest, You got to push back. You got to not let them give you these excuses. They're going to say, oh, Dr. Frank, that's normal. We always remove people that die, people that move away, blah, blah, blah. No, these are people who voted. He said, this is not just removing people from the rolls. This is removing voters from the rolls. They're not inactive. Okay, so in other words, there's 100 people missing in this hypothetical county from the rolls. This is really important that you do this with your auditor. Not because the auditor is going to have to finally admit to you that they're not in control of their rolls. Because they're not going to be able to tell you who those 100 voters are. And when they can't tell you who those 100 voters are, and it's not going to be because of that, they're going to say, the number's too big. They're going to say, I can't tell you who's doing that. Well, who is manipulating your rolls then? That's a huge breakthrough. That's how you red pill your clerks. It's worked multiple times around the country for me. So, where do you stand?
And that also means that their county didn't reconcile.
Correct. Correct. Which is a beautiful thing.
What did she say?
Means that your counties don't reconcile. They do not reconcile. They never reconciled, ever. Their system doesn't allow it. So here's your whole state. You have 99 counties, so I can't show you all of them. I just show you the start of the list. So you can go to the Secretary of State website. For every county, you can find out how many people registered for the 2020 election and how many people voted in the 2020 election. You can also look from the rolls, which I have for every county, how many people registered in every county and how many voted in every county. This is the difference. For every county, 161 people are missing for registration, 130 voters, 125, 63. See, and you can total it up for the state. In other words, 44,348 people voted in your state in 2020, and you don't know who they are. You don't know who they are. That's at a minimum. I actually think the number is twice or 3 times as big as that. This is just a direct subtraction. It's probably twice that. It's probably twice that. But you can't argue your way out of it. You're missing at least that many. And because there are natural changes in the rolls, the number's actually bigger. People who voted. So your state. So now tomorrow when you're talking to your friends, they inflate the voter rolls before the election. And then after the election, they take voters out of the rolls so we don't know who to go canvass. We don't know who they are. We don't reconcile.